Nighttime had arrived, since the events of earlier that day, and the group was still inside the gift shop. All of them were asleep, trying to get some rest after they've been through. Lee was keeping watch, although walkers getting up here were very unlikely. Jane was standing outside, looking out into the open with her arms folded, and as for Rebecca, she was still awake, cradling her newborn baby that had just been cleaned with water they found and wrapped it in a green blanket. They would need more supplies for a baby in the future, but they were okay for now. Clementine, who had been asleep for quite some time, had woken up for some unknown reason. The first thing her eyes met was Rebecca, who continued to admire her little baby. She raised a slight smile as she leaned up. Rebecca shifted her eyes away from the baby when seeing Clementine awake, sitting up to greet her. "Hi, Clementine." "Hey, Rebecca." Clementine returned the greet and sat down with her legs crossed together in a lotus position. She kept her voice quiet to avoid waking the others up. "How's the baby doing?" "He's just perfect, Clem," Rebecca answered, beginning to speak in a cute voice to her baby. "Who's my perfect little baby?" "You are." "Who's the most perfect little man in the whole wide world?" "You are." "He looks just like Alvin," Clementine admitted it, rising her smile across her face. She remembered how everyone assumed a baby was Carver's, but she honestly thought it looked like Rebecca's husband. "Really?" Rebecca inquired. She herself wasn't sure on who the biological father was. She and Alvin were trying for years to have a baby, and after she was probably violated by Carver and declared pregnant a little while later. She was unsure now. She began coughing for a couple seconds, due to exhaustion and the amount of blood she lost. "I'm alright. Just need to get warm." A couple of feet away from where Mike and Bonnie were sitting close next to each other, Mike had also woken up and sat up, resting his hand on top of one of his knees. He shifted his attention towards Clementine and Rebecca, hearing Rebecca mention she was cold. "Hey, we found a coat back at the museum. Figured it could be useful. It's here now." Clementine then followed where she was pointing, picked up the silver war coat jacket rested a couple feet away from her. She placed the coat next to Rebecca, leaving it up to her to decide if she wanted it. "Sorry about the color, Rebecca," Mike apologized. Was that she got back down and prepared to get back to sleep. Rebecca already figured out what she meant by this, and replied to him in somewhat of a harsh tone. "I don't care about the color. What make you think I care about now?" She didn't get a response, and shifted her attention back towards Clementine, who spoke in a calmer tone. "Clem, would you like to hold him?" Clementine hesitated for a moment. She had never held a baby before and had no idea what to do. But if she could survive more than 2 years in a zombie apocalypse, then surely holding a newborn baby could not be. "Can I, please?" "Of course you can. We're all family now." "Clementine, Rebecca reminded the young girl, before she carefully passed over the little baby into Clem's arms. Clementine remained where she was sitting and rested the baby's head on her arms. Was it she smiled? Was it her baby? The baby's eyes remained on the beautiful baby in her arms. Her expression changed slightly when the baby started to cry, but she smoothly calm in the soft, calm voice. "Shh, it's okay. Shh, don't cry." Rebecca watched as her baby stopped crying almost immediately. She was impressed by Clementine's skills, despite the fact that she was still a little girl. For someone who hasn't held a baby before, you're a natural. Nice job, Clementine. Nearby, Lee had been watching and was listening to the entire conversation, leaning up against the wall with his arms folded and slightly smile across his face. He walked inside the gift shop and joined the duo. Well, Clementine, you make a good big sister." Lee shifted his attention back towards Rebecca. His expression changed when he noticed Rebecca was coughing again, looking extremely unwell. "Rebecca, I could take the baby for a while if you'd like. You should rest." "What about you, Lee? When did you last sleep?" Rebecca inquired, whilst trying to get comfortable where she positioned. "Don't worry about me," Lee assured, unable to remember the last time he had a decent sleep. "Probably the last time they were at home, which was the cabin. I'll be fine, and someone has to keep watch him while you get some rest." All right, Lee, Rebecca nodded in agreement as she picked up the silver war coat and unfolded it, using it as a blanket to get some rest for the night. Lee was about to accept the baby from Clementine when he did a quick check behind to see Jane standing outside. Her expression looked like as if something was wrong. He decided to go ask, "Clem, do you mind holding the baby for a couple of minutes? Just need to check on someone." "Sure," she agreed, having no problem with holding this little miracle in her arms. She continued to cradle him slowly, her eyes locked down onto him with a smile across her face. Lee made it towards the exit of the gift shop and had to walk over to Sarah, who was so fast asleep and no longer wearing glasses. He stood outside and turned to his right, where he could see Jane looking through the security shutters that blocked off the inside of the building. "Jane? Aw, shit," Jane mumbled, not quite enough for Lee to hear. "Jane, what the hell are you doing out here?" Lee inquired, was it folding his arms together. Jane knew there was no avoiding the question and decided just to be honest and come out with the truth. "Look, Lee, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go." She leaned down and opened the security shutters. Lee was quite surprised that she wanted to leave the group after everything they had been through all together, especially when she and Luke had spent some alone time together. That didn't get Lee extremely annoyed for the sake of the group. "Go? Where are you going?" I'm just leaving, okay?" she replied. Her face was telling Lee that this was hard for her to do. After today, Jamie, and after today when Sarah almost died, I just don't think I can bear to watch it happen again. "It won't happen," Lee assured, but even he could not predict where this was going in the future. If all three of us can survive on our own for 2 years, then more of us. "Lee, you got lucky today, but everyone's luck runs out in the end. Rebecca, too," Jane explained, shifting her attention away from the older man and proceeding to walk over towards the stairs. However, she halted herself and turned back towards Lee. "Listen, when things begin to tumble, remember to take Carly and Clem and leave that group. If things get south, never let them drag you down with them. Our group is strong and always will be. I'm in charge now and I won't let it fall apart," Lee assured, was that he remained where he was standing for now. "If that's what you think that's best, Lee, then all I can do is wish you luck," Jane replied, turning to 180-degree angle and walked back down towards Lee to say her goodbyes. "You take care of yourself, Lee. I really mean it. And here." She pulled out her nail file and offered it to Lee. Veracity is not overrated. Lee accepted her gift, figuring that it could be useful for Clementine to use. He placed it into his back pocket, was it Jane finished bidding each other goodbye. "Thanks, Jane." "Yeah," Jane replied, leaning her arms out as she did something surprising that no one thought she'd ever do. She embraced Lee in a slight hug just for a few seconds. But then she did not care. Lee was completely off guard by this, but nevertheless, he turned into the hug while it lasted. "And take care of Sarah. She was lucky today." "I will. I'm going to teach her everything I taught Clementine," Lee assured, feeling somewhat like a teacher again. He did not complain, though. He loved teaching when he was a teacher, and sometimes felt as if Clementine was one of his students. But nevertheless, he knew he needed to teach Sarah soon before she got herself into another near-death experience again. Jane was the one to end the hug and finally decided it was time for her to go. Without saying anything further, she turned around and walked down the wooden stairs and made her way over towards the exit. She was now alone again as usual, but decided it was for the best. Lee watched as the young girl was no longer in his sights, and he did not want her to leave and be out on her own, but this was not his decision to make, and all he could do was wish her for the best. He leaned over the wooden railing side, was looking down below. Before long, Lee shifted his attention to the side, and when he heard someone approaching, Luke had emerged from outside and joined Lee inside the building, leaned up against the same wooden railing. He sure hoped that Lee was still not mad at him. "Hey, Lee, I figured you all be asleep. You all right?" "Yeah, I'm good," Lee assured, not taking his eyes from the ground. "All right, good. It's been one hell of a day, though," Luke admitted, thinking about the future when little he realized that things might go smoothly for them if they were not prepared. You know we need to talk about ahead. It's getting colder. We're low on food and shelter, and we're all exhausted, and we're gonna need to stay for a while before we can move. I was thinking that me and Jane could go search for supplies in the morning, if that's alright with you." When Luke mentioned that name, Lee lowered his head even more and turned away, unable to be certain how he was going to break the news to him. Luke caught this sudden attention of expression, left him puzzled on why he acted different all of a sudden. "What is it? You still mad at me because of earlier?" "No, it's not that," Lee assured, taking a deep breath for a moment before announcing the news that Jane was no longer with them. "Luke, Jane's gone. She left." "What?" Luke was in complete shock of what he just heard. He leaned back from the railing, still surprised in the words that he just shot through his eardrums. "When?" "Just moments ago," Lee answered. Luke was now angry and then shocked to hear the news he just heard. Why in the world would Jane leave like this without even telling anyone? "Are you kidding me? Why the hell did she just frickin' leave? What the hell?" He marched over towards the wall and banged his fist against it. "Ah!" Lee then changed his expression to a slightly annoyed tone when Luke banged the wall. He too was upset about Jane leaving, but at least he was handling it calmly. "Hey, shut the hell up! People are sleeping and there's a baby in here now." Sorry. I'm sorry," Luke apologized, with it placed in his hand before the back of his head and rubbed his hair. "Just a sudden shock to me. Luke, we all like Jane, but handle it calmly, will ya?" Lee requested, in somewhat of a harsh tone, and began making his way back to the gift shop. "Handle it calmly?" Luke repeated, now even more upset than before. He then followed Lee into the gift shop and tried to keep his voice down to avoid waking the rest of them up. "Jane and I were close, alright? Lay off on me, will ya?" Lay off? Lee could not believe what Luke was saying. After today, the entire group would be in jeopardized. "Luke, you and Jane put all of us in frickin' jeopardy today, so you both could fool around like a frickin' pair of kids. So forgive me if that upsets you a little." The duo was back in the gift shop. Now were still sleeping, with the exception of Clementine, Rebecca, and the baby. The two girls had shifted their attention towards them and saw and heard them two arguing about something. "Well, what do you want me to say?" Luke inquired. He still paused for a moment and tried to keep himself calm. He did not want any more arguments to start and tried to start reason with him in a normal tone. "Look, Lee, I'm sorry. I truly am. Jane made me an offer, and with all that happening, the entire world roaming with the dead, I just wanted to enjoy something else rather than just think about dying and walkers all day." Lee was about to clash back, but someone understood where Luke was getting at. He did not want another argument to start. He kneeled down towards Clementine and accepted the baby from her, laying him down in his own hands. Wizard stood back and faced Luke. "Luke, I get it, but this baby is what matters. It is the point. We have to put the others before ourselves. It's what matters now, okay?" Okay, I get it," Luke agreed, raising his hands in the air for a moment. The arguer had woken up Mike, went back up, only to just went back to sleep moments ago. He opened his eyes and stood up to investigate the situation. "Hey, is everything alright? Guys, I thought I heard arguments." Luke was about to answer the truth, but decided to keep things quiet until they have solved this argument out. "Everything's alright, Mike." Lee knew that everything was not alright, and remembering what Luke said moments ago, they needed immediate action for the sake of himself, Carly, Clementine, and the baby, and with everyone else that remained in the group. "Guys, we're going to need to push forward as soon as possible. This baby needs supplies, place to be raised, food, water, and safety. We just need to continue heading towards north, to Wellington." There had been no mentions of that plan since Carver had arrived at the ski lodge and kidnapped them all, but that was their best plan for now. Obviously had no idea how they can get back to the cabin, and this gift shop was not exactly any place you wish to call home. Wellington was their best bet, and they were planning on heading there shortly after leaving the cabin. "There is a town across river." Clementine joined in on the conversation, but remained where she was sitting for now. "We could go there. There might be supplies we could find," Lee wondered, kneeling back towards Rebecca as he handed her baby back for a moment. All right, Clementine's got a point. Everyone, that town could have food, water, and supplies and weapons, everything we need. That's our best bet. We should get moving when we're ready. Well, we might be here for a few days, Luke admitted, folding his arms across his chest once he turned back towards Rebecca, who was slightly coughing again. Rebecca's not in any condition to travel yet anyway. We've got that baby formula that we found to feed the baby for a while. What about shelter? Mike added. He too was declining on joining the conversation. We'll all freeze to death out here without shelter. Guys, Rebecca spoke up and coughed for a few more seconds. We should leave straight away. Don't worry about me. If there's any chance finding those supplies, we could take it. Luke still disagreed with what she just said, especially in her condition. But if that was the condition she wanted them, he could not stop her. All right, Rebecca, if that's what you want to do. We should all just try and rest for the night, Mike suggested. Winston moved backwards towards the back of the store where he'd been sleeping. It's been a long day. We all decide in the morning when the others are awake. We do things as a group, Lee reminded them. Winston found his own sleeping position, which was next to Carly. He lay down beside her on his side and rested his head on his arms, closing his eyes to attempt to get some sleep. The rest of the group soon decided to get some sleep, too, for the morning ahead. Rebecca was able to sleep with her baby in her arms. Hopefully they'll be able to begin their journey towards Wellington, fight through the cold, and find somewhere safe. But if they could see what the future holds for them. The next day, when the entire group had woken at first at dawn, they made their decision that it was to leave right away. Although Rebecca looked visibly weakened, she assured to everyone that she'd be fine. The group are now making their way through the woods towards town, where they had encountered the area that was snowing, and twice as cold as before. But there was no going back now, the way they came this far. Lee escorted the group and walked ahead, with Carly beside him. Luke was behind him, armed with his AK-47, and his sleeves were now rolled down. Bonnie was behind him, supporting Rebecca, who was now wearing the Civil War coat to keep warm, and tried to walk in support with the baby in her arms. Clementine and Sarah were close behind them too, both trying to keep themselves warm. And last but not least was Mike, whom Luke had his sleeves rolled down. The group remained silent as they continued walking. The only thing they could hear was their footsteps, pressing onto the snow, and the cold whistling blowing in the area. Each of them was freezing cold and wished they were in shelter, but they had to keep moving. Rebecca had suddenly collapsed, while they're moving, fell down to her knees, still exhausted from giving birth. She was helped back up to her feet by Bonnie. I'm all right. We need to keep moving. They resumed walking. Clementine shifted her attention towards her best friend, who walked closely next to her. How are you doing, Sarah? I'm cold, she said, but she was obvious to Clementine. I wish we were still at the cabin. So do I, Sarah, but we'll find somewhere soon, Clementine assured. She herself was struggling to keep warm, despite the jacket she wore. She could not imagine how she felt without it. Luke picked up the pace a little bit to keep up, and the same speed, same level with Lee. His expression both looked angry and regretful as he began speaking. We shouldn't have gone yet. We should have stayed for at least a few more days until Rebecca was more rest. We could turn back. We can't do that, Luke, Lee declined, refusing to go back after they came this far. We all decided as a group. We didn't force Rebecca to leave. It was her choice. He turned back towards the others for a moment and raised his voice. Just hang in there, everyone. We'll make it out of that town before nightfall. Lee, I'm not sure how long everyone's going to hang out in there for, Luke reminded him. He could barely survive out there and was unsure about Rebecca. The kids and the baby were going to be. Before Lee could reply, the group stopped yet again when Rebecca collapsed for the second time. This time on her side, but she did not let go of her baby. The baby began crying when his mother had fallen down, and that scared him. Here, she could sit here, Mike said, gesturing his arm over to a tire that looked big enough for Rebecca to rest it. Rebecca, we can hold the baby for you if you like, Lee offered, but he was only trying to take the baby in case if Rebecca began to weaken, their arms would give out. Rebecca was assisted by Bonnie over towards the tire and sat down, Lizette still holding the baby in her arms. It's all right. I got him. Okay, everyone rest up for a few minutes, Lee instructed, willing to give the group a few minutes to rest up for a while. He wanted to give them more time, but if they were still out there by nighttime, then things would get worse. Now everyone, hello! Lee was then cut off by a sudden sound of unfamiliar voice, and he and the others shifted their attention down the path where they could see someone limping towards them. He called out to them in a language that sounded Russian, but none of them understood what he was saying. However, Clementine recognized that man from yesterday. Arvo, Clementine spoke up. Arvo? Lee repeated, shifting his attention towards Clementine with a concerned expression. You know him? Jane and I met him back at the observation deck when we went to check out, Clementine explained, but decided to leave that part out of Jane trying to rob him. He doesn't look dangerous, Carly admitted, was there watching Arvo made his way over towards them. He doesn't have a gun, and I don't think he could run. He claimed to have a sick sister when we met him, Clementine added. She was not sure if that was true or not. She only chose not to steal from him because it was not right. I don't like this, Lee replied, folding his arms together as they watched Arvo continue limping towards them. He turned his back towards the others and got them prepared in case if things got bad. He kept the Glock 17 held in his arms, just in case. Have your guns ready, just in case. Eventfully, Arvo had made his way over to the group and stopped only a couple feet away from Lee, Carly, and Clementine. He recognized the little girl stand before him and greeted her. Hello, Clementine. That was your name, yes? Hi, Arvo, Clementine greeted. Unsure if he was angry towards them from the incident before, but she was the one who chose not to steal and seemed very grateful for that. These are all your people, yes? Arvo inquired. Lee was the one to answer his question, rather than let his adoptive daughter do the talking. I'm Lee, what do you want? I met Clementine before. I was hoping you could all help me, Arvo requested, but he did not exactly explain where he wanted them. How is your sister doing? Clementine asked, unsure of what else to ask him. My sister? She's not doing so well, Arvo answered, as he shifted his attentions back towards the adults and began to state the things he needed. I need, bandages. Yes, bandages. Are you hurt? Bonnie inquired. No, Arvo answered, and then lowered his head down for some unknown reason. The group were then startled by all of a sudden someone yelling from behind them in the circle when 3 more people appeared. The first one was a man with no hair, tattoos on his face, wearing a green coat, dark green pants, and looked like in his middle 30s. He emerged from the woods armed with an AK-47 and aimed towards the group. The second one was a man with brown hair, wearing a dark blue jacket, blue jeans, and looked like in his early 30s. He emerged from behind the group with an FN SLP shotgun, who also aimed towards the group. The last one was a woman with dirty blonde hair, wearing a brown jacket with a white t-shirt underneath with blue jeans, and around her middle 30s. She walked beside Arvo, armed with a Beretta 92 FS Inox pistol that she aimed towards the group. Oh shit, Lee mumbled, secretly glad that he and the group did not have prepared with their weapons. Hark, screw us, Luke groaned, now even more wishing they stayed for a few days. The woman turned towards Arvo and spoke to them in a naive language. Da, Arvo answered, causing the other 2 members of their team to chuckle. The man with the AK-47 began to speak towards Arvo, who said he still held him at gunpoint. Ni mogo provata, mishisia de dovisha provle, blisse de guy. But it couldn't understand what the rest of them were saying. It was basically something that cannot be good. What did he say? Clementine inquired, unable to be certain on what they were explaining. I told him that you were the ones who tried to rob me. They think it's funny because you're a little girl, Arvo answered, before he began to explain their intentions. They want you to put down your weapons and don't try anything stupid so we can take your things. Robbed? Lee repeated. He was in complete shock of what this man just accused them of. He turned back towards Clementine for the truth. Despite the situation they're in. You robbed him? Now wait just a minute, Luke told him. Nobody did anything stupid. Mike did, as the rest of the members of Arvo's group weren't unsure if they understood him or not. I didn't rob you, Arvo. No, Clementine reminded him, somewhat angry that he would do this to her. Let her after she let him go, when most people would have just killed him and took his things. It wasn't my idea to steal from you. I gave him back. It was Jane's idea, not mine. The rest of us had nothing to do with it. Jane? Arvo repeated, still ignoring what Clementine just said to him. He observed the group area around him, noticing the woman who attacked him was nowhere to be found. Where is she? Where's Jane? The rest of some of the group members of Arvo's group were speaking in a different language, though they were asking amongst themselves. I don't see her anywhere. Where is she? Arvo asked Clementine, his expression now angrier than before. He had just discovered the woman who he wanted to take revenge was no longer with them. She's gone, Arvo. She's not there anymore. Clementine reassured him, but her words did not seem to take effect. Arvo was beginning to panic and took a couple steps back, with learning from the group of what he just assumed. Take it easy, Lee ordered, but unfortunately he knew what was already going to happen. If he did not act fast, he did something extremely risky, but he was left with no other choice. Guys, guns! Everyone in the group who was armed immediately took action. Lee and Luke aimed their Glock 17 and AK-47 towards Arvo and the other woman. Mike and Bonnie aimed towards the man with their Glock 17 and Beretta 92 FS Inox, and Carly aimed her Glock 17 towards the man with the FNSLP shotgun. Clementine had her own Glock, but she did not aim it towards anyone. Instead, she stood in the center of the group beside Sarah, who was beginning to panic, but remained silent for now. Both groups are now in the standoff, aiming their weapons towards one another. This can be easy for all of you if you just do what we say, Arvo assured, but he did not like where his words were going through the members of the group. Just put your weapons down. No, you put your weapons down, Lee shouted towards him. Wizard, he closed his one eye, where his Glock 17 for a clear shot at Arvo's head. The man with the AK-47s continued speaking to Arvo in their native language. Please, we have a baby, Clementine pleaded with them. Hopefully that would be enough to get them to change their minds to defuse the situation. Arvo was taken by a surprise when he heard the news of them having a baby. He shifted his attention towards Rebecca, who did not look so good, but mainly his attention was on her crying baby. You have a baby in your group? He called back to his group about the sudden news. No one in the group seemed to be paying attention to him, but kept their focus towards the enemies. The situation was now getting tense as the members' groups both yelled threats to each other. We got you outnumbered and outgunned. Put it down. Don't even try, piece of shit. I'm an excellent shot, and I've never missed once my entire life, so I don't want to start now. Nobody get excited. I swear to Christ, I will shoot you. You stand. Put the gun down, you bastards. You know you can't win us, so drop the guns before I put a bullet right through your brains. I never miss. Was it the group continuing arguing, demanded one another to their weapons, but Sarah was too busy looking at something to her left, and was shocked to not even care about the conflict between the groups. Clementine? Clementine so slowly shifted her attention back when she heard Sarah calling her, and that what she saw next horrified her. She watched as Rebecca leaned up from where she was sitting, but her hands were no longer holding the baby. Her skin was even more paler, and attempt to reach towards Clementine. As Clementine did not want to admit it, Rebecca was now a walker. She must have died earlier from the blood loss, exhaustion, hypothermia, or all three. She could eat her own baby right now if she did not act quick. Help! Rebecca! Her screams for help attracted Lee, who just witnessed Rebecca now as a walker. In an act of panic, he aimed his Glock 17 towards her. He had a second hesitation, but at the end, he grabbed Clementine back, squeezed the trigger, shooting Rebecca directly in the forehead. The sound of the gun being fired, and everyone at the rest of their group causing them to panic, so they took action. No! The group halted their arguments and gunfire in the air. Both groups were shooting towards one another. The last thing Lee had done to protect Clementine was to push her towards the ground to save her seconds before the gunfire began. But he was not able to move himself. out of harm's way in time.